We're live. So, have you been in an IEP meeting and you're getting down to the part where you're talking about how much time your child's going to be in the general ed classroom? And for the first time, the special ed teacher suggests that your child be included for subjects like social studies and science. And it's like, yay, we're finally getting somewhere. And then a few months into, maybe just 1 or 2 months into the school year, you email the special ed teacher and the general ed teacher, and you're like, how's it going for social studies and science? And the general ed teacher writes back and says, pretty good. And you're like, okay, what does pretty good mean? And it's like, wow, I have no idea what's going on. So you are in the right place. If you would like to know 5 must-ask questions during that IEP meeting that you need to ask, and they need to be answered in order for your child to be actively participating in the general ed class for things like social studies and science. So if this is something that perks your interest, stay tuned because that's what we're talking about today. Yes, 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 yes. So our first question is, what does your child already know about this topic? So one, you have to know the topics that they're going to be talking about in social studies and science this year. And usually they're the same topics, the same units that teachers do every year, like 6th grade social studies always talks about Egypt. So what you want to do is figure out, so if the 6th grade class is talking about Egypt, what does my child know about Egypt? So I'm going to take my son Dylan for an example. Dylan has Down syndrome, is now an adult. So I'm going to go back in my memories to when he was in 6th grade in middle school. And because he had an older brother and sister, Dylan remembered about these, I think he called them like picture stamps. And what they were hieroglyphic stamps. And I still have these. I don't get rid of things. So Dylan remembers when his brother and sister were in 6th grade and they studied Egypt, that they had these. So we brought these out again. And if I can open this magic box here, and we're missing a couple. But it was so cool because this was something that really attracted Dylan. And so it was like, we could use this in the study of Egypt. And not only would Dylan love it, but guess what? All the other kids in the class loved using them too. So that was something I knew the teachers could tap into. But what else did Dylan know about Egypt? Um, he didn't necessarily know that there's a desert in Egypt. However, in New Mexico, in Arizona, different places, Dylan has walked in a desert. So we could tap into those memories of, remember when we were in Arizona and those big cactus and all the sand, and so that would be something that we could tap into. I'm trying to think. I wrote a couple notes, so I'm trying to remember what else. What else? Oh, the other thing is, if he would see a picture of a pyramid, he would be able to say, oh, look, pyramid. Or if he saw a picture of a mummy, he'd be like, oh, mummy, and he loved it. So as a team at your IEP meeting, I think it's really important to talk about what kind of prior knowledge does your child have about that unit of study or the topic they're doing in science class or whatever? So you want to tap into that Share it with the teachers, because the teachers don't know what your child has already been exposed to around that topic. So if you're here, say hi. Our second question is, what are the key concepts, the vocabulary words, the maybe specific skills that everyone on the IEP team wants to make sure your child learns through being in general ed with these, social studies or science classes? Now, the reason why I say, what are we all, everyone, is going to be working on? Because I don't want it to be, well, they're in general ed, the general ed teacher is responsible for this science and social studies curriculum. And it's like, yes. However, if your child's also getting speech and language services, that's like a perfect opportunity for the SLP to pre-teach some of the vocabulary words that your child's going to be hearing when they're in that general ed classroom. And as a parent, you want to know what those big picture, big concepts are that your child's going to be held accountable for. Because I think the other thing that happens is, so many times we think, just having our kids sit in that US history class, they're going to absorb a lot of information. And yes, that's true on one hand, but we don't want them just absorbing information. We want them to take it a step further and be able to explain that to someone else, be able to understand when the teacher's using that vocabulary word. And we want them to be able to apply it, to come home and be able to share what they've learned. So it's really important that we zero in on the few concepts that we want your child to be responsible for. Now, for some kids, it's not going to be at the depth that every other sixth grader is going to learn about Egypt. For Dylan, some of the key vocabulary that we wanted him to recognize as like a sight word and understand the meaning, one was Egypt. And it's like, can Dylan recognize that word? Can he say Egypt when he sees it? Can he locate Egypt on a map? So those were going to be some specific things that we wanted to track. And by the end of that unit, we wanted to see, can Dylan say Egypt? Can he point to it on the map? So then there were other things, like how were the pyramids built, for him to have a basic understanding of moving those heavy blocks and how the Egyptians did it not millions, but thousands of years ago. So look at what they're studying, and what do you think would be some good things for your child to get out of that unit? So if this is making sense to you, say hi. Hey, Trisha. Trisha is in Idaho, and she says, hello, good to be here. I'm having a conference with the science teacher next week. Oh, perfect timing, Trisha. Yes. And Trisha's in our Connecting for Change group. So if you have follow-up questions, Trisha, we can really dive into it. I'm excited. Cool. So if I can hide this comment, go back to my banners. So let's continue on. The third question that you want to ask is, what are the ways the team can present the information to your child? So, and this goes along with the UDL, principles, as far as having a variety of ways to present, to show the child the information. So a lot of times we think about, videos or audio books, or, small group discussions, or working on the computer. So what are the ways that are going to help your child learn this science, social studies content in a way that makes sense for them? So for my son, Dylan, he's a real visual learner. So if we could have some videos to pre-teach some of the things that the teacher was going to go into, and he could watch those videos at home, it was Excellent. Of course, if the teacher shows videos during the classroom, that's great too. But the visuals, and I was going to show you like some of the things that we would do would be to try to find books on that subject. And one of the things, and I mean, it can be if your child's using the, a textbook or if their textbook is online or whatever. But one of the things that we tried to do was find books that had lots of pictures and more story oriented things. Or the other thing is to find books like this. I love these. Um, and it really takes the information down into a more basic level. Um, and so finding things like this can be helpful, depending on the topic that you're going to be writing on. The other thing that really helped Dylan was working with a partner, especially if the partner was a cute girl. And you might think that's silly, and I laugh. However, it's like finding the kids in the class that your kid connects with and have them be science lab partners. Um, like, so to be real thoughtful ahead of time, um, and to make sure that all the members of the IEP team are really knowledgeable about what your child's going to be doing in the science or social studies class and how they can, help impact that. So, for instance, if your child is, has a modified worksheet and there's, the words on one column and then the next column there's definitions, and your child has to, draw the line from, this word to that definition and make a diagonal line. Well, maybe that's one of their child's fine motor goals is drawing diagonal lines. Well, instead of just like having a worksheet with a bunch of diagonal lines, have the OT use a social studies or science worksheet and have them do that. Or writing the answers, right? I mean, that would be great. So have other people on the team um, bought into the concept that we can all be doing this together. So does that make sense? Are you excited? I love. Um, so that's thinking of different ways to present the information. Now, another principle of UDL is how are the kids going to show you what they've learned or what they know how to do as a result of learning about Egypt or how to dissect a frog or whatever the topic is. And, I want to take you back for a moment. Think about when you were in high school, and let's say you were in a U.S. history class, and the teacher is giving everybody some time at the end of the period to study for tomorrow's U.S. history test. So you're like, great, I need some extra time here to study. So you're studying, it's all class is quiet, and the teacher walks over and whispers and says, you know what? You don't have to take the test tomorrow. And you're like, what? Yeah, it's okay. You don't have to take the test tomorrow. Now, think back when you were a high school kid. If you had a teacher giving you a pass not to take the test, how would you react? So let me know in the comments. And I have allergies. So, how would you react if your high school teacher said, just you, it's everybody else is taking it, but you don't have to take it tomorrow? Well, I think most people would be like ecstatic, right? It's like, whoa, I'm so glad I don't have a test. Well, guess what? When Dylan was a freshman in high school, he was in U.S. history class because Dylan was included in all his classes. And the football coach, who also happened to be the U.S. history teacher, went up to Dylan and said, Dylan, you don't have to take the test tomorrow. Now, I wasn't there. I don't know exactly how Dylan reacted, but I do know when he came home, he just had this like forlorn look on his face. Like, maybe he lost his best friend and I could tell it was more than just being sad or tired or hungry. It was like, Dylan, what's up? And Dylan looked at me and he said, you know what, Mom? My teacher doesn't think I'm smart enough. And I was like, what? My teacher doesn't think I'm smart enough. My teacher told me I don't have to take the test tomorrow. And I was like flabbergasted. It's like, what? So here a kid is getting permission not to have to take the test. The teacher's probably thinking he's doing Dylan a favor. And guess what? It wasn't a favor. It was like a slap in the face. Nah, don't worry about it. You don't have to do this. And Dylan's interpretation was, my teacher doesn't think I'm smart enough. And I don't want your child to be sitting in a classroom and thinking the teacher doesn't think I'm smart enough. They're not giving me any work to do. They just want me to be quiet and sit here. So we want to have kids accountable. We want kids to be learning, right? I mean, yeah, they're soaking up knowledge, they're making friends, and they're also supposed to be accessing the gender ed curriculum and actively learning it. So you and the staff, the people working with your child, you need to decide what are some choices we can give this student to show us what he's learned. Like, I don't know about you, back in my day, a long time ago, we used to always have to do book reports. I think, almost every week in English class, we had to do another book report. Well, fast forward 2023, and I was talking to my 6th grade granddaughter, and she was working on a project for one of her classes. And I'm like, oh, so what are you doing for the project? And she goes, well, everybody has to do a commercial for something that they like. And I was like, oh, so we came away from everybody doing a book report to everybody doing a commercial. And props to the teacher for thinking of something besides a book report. However, how about if we opened up our mind a little bit more and we said, what are some ways that Dylan can show us those things that we wanted him to learn about Egypt when it comes at the end of the unit? So one of the things I mentioned is a goal for Dylan was to be able to look at a U.S. world map and be able to point to where Egypt is. Now, this was a long time ago, right? So it's when classrooms still had those pull down maps that you had to like make sure really stuck or they'd go flying up. So, yeah. So Dylan would practice with that world map, right? And first it was like, okay, let's just figure out where Africa is. And so we got that continent so he could visually scan it. And then it's like, okay, now let's look at the top of Africa, whatever. So we made sure that he was able to do that. So what else did Dylan do to show what he learned about Egypt? Well, he did a presentation to class. And this is kind of at the time when PowerPoints were starting to get popular, but every teacher still had an overhead projector. Did you have an overhead projector in one of your classes? The teacher would put those plastic transparencies on it and blind everybody when they turned it on or something. So anyway, Dylan, we had some worksheets that he, did some sketching on, and we because I was a teacher, I turned it into overhead transparencies. So Dylan had a sequence of pictures of transparencies that he could show the class of this is a process of how they built the pyramids. Now, the other thing that Dylan loved, of course, was these hieroglyphic stamps. And so another one of his final projects was to be able to show his first name and his last name in hieroglyphics and have that as a product that he turned in. And what else? Oh, mummies. So this was the thing that like fascinated Dylan the most. And it wasn't necessarily like how the pharaohs were mummified. What Dylan found in one book was they even mummified mice. And it's like, oh my God. So Dylan wanted to make some kind of mummy. And it was like, oh my God. And we actually found this description of how you could take like a whole, like go to the grocery store, the meat department, take a chicken and like mummify it. It was like, no, we're not actually doing that. But so instead, what we convinced him to use instead of a store-bought chicken was just a stuffed animal. And so he went through the process of wrapping it up and doing all this stuff. And we had a shoebox that he decorated and made a tomb out of. And you might be thinking, I don't know, Charmaine, that sounds kind of childish for sixth graders. But you know what? For Dylan, it was like so exciting, which is another part of UDL to keep kids engaged and motivated. And like I said earlier, all the other kids in the class, they were wanting to use the hieroglyphic stamps too. So look at, what you decided earlier as far as those key concepts that your child's going to learn, and also as a team decide how are we going to help this child show what they learned during this whole unit. So we are down to our fifth question, and if you guys have questions, post them. So Trisha says, gotta get my glasses on here. My son would be mortified. He will take a test without support and fail rather than be different. Yeah, so that is like super important information for the team to have. So if it's like, yeah, okay, that's great. We can come up with these creative ideas. And if Dylan was the only one doing these creative ideas, he might have felt bad with the unit on Egypt because everybody else maybe took, a written test. So one of the keys is that this is not a concept just for kids on IEPs. The whole universal design for learning and how we change and adapt things and customize and individualize things, everybody in the class, that should be a common practice. Now, I'm a retired teacher. I have no, I don't know, concept that like every teacher is using UDL and it's all going to be perfect. However, we have to start kind of infiltrating the education system and see there's another way. So, Trisha, if your son would rather take a test without support and fail it rather than look different, then let's talk some more. And we can do that today, and we can do some more in our Connecting for Change group. So I don't know, like for some kids, they want their worksheet, they want their test to look exactly like when they look around the room, what everybody else has. Now, I don't know if that's like what your son would also want. There are ways to modify, sometimes like printed text tests or worksheets. So, if it's a matching, like they might have less vocabulary words and definitions to match, but they still have a vocabulary section. If it's a short answer, type of question, they're going to still have some short answer questions, but maybe not that require them to know some real details that we didn't really want, expect them to learn. Um, but yeah, talk more about that because that's really important. And I hear that a lot about, I don't want to be different. And to me, where's my red flag? To me, I don't want to be different is a red flag that the teacher is not individualizing, adapting to kids' interests and their level and everything. So that's an even bigger problem, right? But I would talk to the teacher and say, what do you typically do at the end of this science unit? Do you do a test? Do you have kids do projects? And at the beginning of the unit, have that conversation with the general ed teacher and start planting some seeds. Are there other ways that he could do this? And look at what his prior knowledge is about the subject, look at how he learns best, look at how he can show what he learns, see if you can't bring all of that together. Hey, Kim, it's like a reunion. Kim's in our Connecting for Change group, and she is listening in from Iowa. Hey, Kim. Um, so, yeah, we're talking about social studies, science, how kids can be more effectively included there. So, let's look at another question. I think we're down to question number 5. So, we've gone through the other parts, as far as what your child knows about the topic, how they learn, what we're going to keep them accountable for. And so now it's like, well, great, we got all these ideas, but who's going to gather the instructional, materials or make the modifications or have some accommodated work or whatever? So at the IEP meeting, or if you're having a separate meeting with the general ed, special ed, your team, just to talk about the science curriculum, you want to identify, well, for one, if we're doing the unit on Egypt, if you don't have your own set of hieroglyphic stamps, it's like, well, that's a great idea, but we don't have those in our building. So is it something that your budget will allow you to buy because you can reuse it every year when you do your favorite Egypt unit? Is it something the parent can provide from home? They might have some books. It's like, oh, they've already read these books. And yeah, if they can bring these to school, yeah, they could share it with the other. Oh, this would be great. So you want to look for a variety of sources. Now, when I talk about finding books and stuff, what a great place to go is like any kind of I'm thinking of Goodwill or Salvation Army, like any kind of a thrift store. I mean, you can buy books sometimes for 10 cents a piece, or in your library. Sometimes, or a lot of times, public libraries will have like a couple time a year sale on books. So that's a great place to try to find books. Garage sales, great place to find old books. And what helps is if you know what the topics are coming up that your child's going to study. So another tip that you could do is at the end of the school year, at the end of 6th grade, you want to contact the 7th grade teacher and say, what are your science and social studies units for 7th grade? And then you have time to kind of collect and find some materials. So what do you think? What do you think? And would these questions help you? Let me know. The other thing I wanted to share with you is next Thursday evening, December 14th, we're going to have a training on how to use artificial intelligence while you're making modifications, accommodations, thinking of ways to help your child be successfully included in things like science and social studies. So the questions that we asked today are like the foundational questions that you want to have. And next Thursday night, I'm going to show you 2 AI tools that you can use, that you can insert a text and it will write it at a different reading level, which is like really helpful. However, just having something written at a different reading level isn't going to sustain the teacher and your child the whole time they're studying dissecting pigs. They need more than just reading level changed, right? There are some AI tools that will give you comprehension questions, multiple choice, short answers. I'm going to show you that tool and how those can be helpful. However, I'm also going to go back to my current favorite tool, which is ChatGPT, because what we can do in ChatGPT is we can do so much more individualizing, giving a description of your child, how they learn, what they're interested in, what things they already know about the topic. I'm going to be sharing a prompt with you that will just make things so much easier, not only for you, but for the teacher. And I know Kim, if Kim's still on here, Kim has use some of these tools for like a YouTube video, and then having the AI tool summarize the video, give questions about the video. So there are some really easy ways for you to do it. And then I also want you to share it with the teachers. So Trisha, when you have your meeting next week with the science teacher, you could show him some of these AI tools that teachers are using, and it can be really quick and easy for them to come up with some modified work. And then you can also talk about using ChatGPT to really zero in on making it more individualized. And Kim says, this is very related to our situation right now. I love the timing. She said, Jameson, oh no, you're kidding. Jameson is doing the Egypt unit in social studies right now. Well, Kim, you have to go on. I don't even know if Amazon was around when Dylan was in 6th grade. I don't know. I think I bought this from like a Scholastic book club or something. I could give you the link. This is like a good ticket. But yeah, the questions that we asked, and then Kim, because people that are in our Connecting for Change membership group, they also get kind of as a bonus AI training each month. So this month we're going to be looking at modifications and how we get the teachers to answer these questions as a team, for the whole team to be bought into, this is what we're going to be doing. So if you'd like that AI training, and like I said, it's in our membership group, we do the AI training once a month. So it's not too overwhelming because we're busy. So if you go to iep.today/AICFC, so that stands for AI Connecting for Change. Okay, so go there. You can get your membership for our Connecting for Change group, where we talk all about different kinds of ways to help parent voices be heard, be listened to, actually have things implemented in your kids' IEP. And the last few months, we've also added AI training into our membership group. So it's like you get 2 programs for 1. It's great. So what other questions do you have? I love, love, love. Like it's like for 2 people already, right? That Trisha's going to talk to the science teacher next week, and Kim's son Jameson is working on Egypt right now. So use those 5 questions. I will be sending those questions out in a newsletter I do every week. And I usually have it come out on Tuesday or Wednesday. So yeah, I want to make sure that the Facebook Lives that we do here every other week, that they're really like hands-on, something that you can use, not theory, but it's like this really works in real life. So, any comments to close this out today? Yeah, Kim says she'll have to Google it. It's so cool. I loved it too. um, so I don't see any other questions. I love that you were here with us today and the interest that you have in making sure that your child is safe, happy, and learning at school, because we want to make sure that your child gets the education that they deserve. So, thank you for being here today. I am Charmaine Tanner. I'm an advocate, and I am thrilled to be able to have conversations with you and brainstorm new ideas. So, I think because of December, this is our last Facebook Live for the month. However, in January, we'll start back up every other week. We have a Facebook Live here. So, thank you, Trisha. Thank you, thank you. And you guys take care. And remember, we got to keep on keeping on. So take care. And let's see if I have an outro.